When you think of Florida, what comes to mind? Sunshine, pristine beaches, and a thriving tourism industry that never sleeps. At least, that's the image sold by headlines and glossy marketing campaigns. Reports from real estate boards and tourism agencies are quick to emphasize record numbers, growth, and stability. But when you actually walk down the streets of Sarasota, Naples, or Fort Myers, the reality feels different. Restaurants are half empty. Clinics that used to be overwhelmed during the winter months are suddenly quiet. Rental properties sit vacant, even during what should be peak season. This contrast, the glowing reports versus the lived experience, raises a critical question. Who exactly is benefiting from Florida's so-called boom? And perhaps more importantly, who is missing? For decades, Florida's economy has relied not just on tourists, but on a very specific group of visitors, seasonal residents, often called snowbirds. They don't just stay for a week. They stay for months. They don't just visit the beach once. They become part of the community. And that difference in behavior translates into a difference in dollars. One Canadian family spending half the year in Florida can contribute the same as dozens of short-term tourists. That means a single missing snowbird represents a serious gap for local businesses, healthcare providers, and even airlines. Yet, in recent years, new policies, shifting economics, and global alternatives are pushing these long-term residents away. Florida may not be facing a tourism collapse in the way headlines suggest, but what it is facing might be even more dangerous: a slow erosion of the very foundation its seasonal economy is built on. In today's analysis, we'll separate the hype from the hard data, explore why Florida's growth narrative doesn't tell the whole story, and reveal the hidden risks shaping its future. When you first look at the official reports, the picture seems surprisingly stable. The National Association of Realtors, or NAR, released its latest update on vacation home transactions. On paper, the numbers suggest resilience. Sales volume appears flat year over year, and the average closing prices in popular destinations such as Florida, Arizona, and Nevada are reported as holding steady. For many casual observers, this gives the impression that the second home market is immune to the turbulence we're seeing in primary housing markets. But when we move beyond the surface, a different reality begins to unfold. Zillow's own research shows a noticeable decline in search activity for vacation properties. In Sarasota and Naples, two of Florida's most sought-after coastal markets, search volumes are down double digits compared to last year. The Zillow Home Value Index, or ZHVI, also reveals sharper volatility in these regions, with price swings widening far more than in traditional metropolitan areas. This volatility signals uncertainty and weaker buyer conviction. Now let's layer in Redfin's data center. Rental demand, often a proxy for short-term investment activity, has fallen significantly. Vacation rentals in markets like Nevada and coastal Florida show occupancy rates slipping. Even more concerning is the sharp decline in cash buyers from Canada, a segment that historically represented a reliable influx of foreign capital. In the last 12 months, Redfin data suggests that Canadian cash purchases are down more than 40%. That's a gap no stable report can easily hide. To make sense of this, imagine a chart that compares the number of recorded transactions against the actual number of unique buyers entering these markets. On paper, transactions look flat, but in reality, fewer people are showing up, and those who do are circling cautiously, negotiating harder, and in many cases, pulling back before closing. This is the gap between perception and reality. Official reports can paint a beautiful picture, stable lines, reassuring averages, a narrative of calm. But if you trace where the money is really flowing, you discover something else entirely. Demand has cooled, liquidity has thinned, and the once reliable pipeline of international buyers is drying up. The message is simple yet sobering. Reports may look good, but the real money has already evaporated. One of the most overlooked dynamics in the vacation housing market is the difference between two types of seasonal visitors, the snowbirds and the short-term tourists. At first glance, both groups seem to bring money into local economies. But when we compare the scale and duration of their spending, the impact is worlds apart. Let's start with the numbers. A typical short-term tourist family might stay in Sarasota or Naples for 1 week. According to local hospitality surveys, their average spending, accommodation, dining, entertainment, and transportation totals around $1,200. It's a welcome boost for restaurants and attractions, but it's quick, transactional, and gone in 7 days. Now compare that to a Snowbird family, usually retirees from Canada or the northern US, who spend up to 6 months in these markets. Their average spending on housing, utilities, healthcare, groceries, restaurants, and community services easily surpasses $33,000 per season. And unlike tourists, Snowbirds build relationships with local businesses, returning year after year, creating predictable and stable revenue streams. Here's where the human story matters. Picture a physician in Sarasota who once relied on his Canadian Snowbird patients every winter. They booked regular checkups, filled prescriptions locally, and contributed consistently to his practice's income. Today, with fewer Snowbirds flying south, his appointment calendar has visible gaps. Or think about a small family-run restaurant in Naples. Their regulars, long-term Canadian residents, weren't just customers, they were part of the community. Now, with those familiar faces absent, the restaurant depends more heavily on unpredictable tourist traffic. The math is even more striking when you visualize it. One Canadian Snowbird family is worth the equivalent of 28 American short-term tourist families. That's the multiplier effect of 6 months of sustained residency. Snowbirds don't just spend more. They anchor an entire ecosystem of services: real estate agents, landscapers, home repair crews, medical professionals, and local cultural venues. The meaning is clear. Short-term visitors may fill hotel rooms, but long-term seasonal residents create value chains that ripple through multiple industries. When Snowbirds disappear, the loss is not just in vacation rentals. It cascades across healthcare, retail, construction, and even philanthropy, as many Snowbirds also donate to local charities and support civic projects. So while official tourism boards may point to steady visitor arrivals, the hidden truth is this: 1,000 tourists can't replace 100 Snowbirds. Stability isn't measured in headcounts. It's measured in how long money stays and circulates in the community. For decades, Snowbirds were welcomed as part of the Florida way of life. But recent policy changes have unsettled that relationship. A new law requires foreign seasonal residents who stay longer than 30 days to undergo fingerprinting and enhanced security checks. While framed as a public safety measure, the ripple effects have been dramatic. Take the story of Margaret, a 68-year-old retired teacher from Regina, Canada. For over 15 years, she spent her winters in a modest 2-bedroom condo in Naples. Her life there was predictable: bridge nights with neighbors, volunteering at a local thrift shop, and spending generously at nearby restaurants. But this year, the rules changed. After her first month, she was told she needed to schedule an appointment for biometric registration, fingerprints, background checks, and interviews before being allowed to extend her stay. The process felt invasive, bureaucratic, and, above all, unwelcoming. Margaret decided she'd had enough. Instead of renewing her seasonal stay, she put her condo on the market. But here's the problem: so did many others. With Canadian Snowbirds exiting en masse, supply began to outpace demand. Margaret sold her condo at a 15% loss, a financial hit she never anticipated. Her story is not an isolated case. It's part of a growing trend. The emotional dimension here is critical. As one Canadian resident told a local reporter, "A home should never treat you like a criminal." That single line captures the core of the backlash. Snowbirds don't see themselves as visitors anymore. After decades of integration, they see themselves as part-time Floridians. To suddenly treat them with suspicion undermines trust and fractures community ties. Data backs this sentiment. According to the FHFA, Federal Housing Finance Agency, home prices in neighborhoods historically popular with Canadian Snowbirds, such as parts of Sarasota and Naples, have declined by as much as 8% year over year. The correlation is clear. As Canadian residents retreat, property values sag. Visually, you could map 2 lines on the same chart. One tracking Canadian seasonal arrivals, the other tracking local property prices. The 2 lines move almost in parallel, downward. When Snowbirds leave, wealth leaves with them. This is the real shockwave. The policies may have been designed for security, but their unintended consequence has been eroding trust, draining capital, and destabilizing property markets. What was once a partnership between community and seasonal residents has turned into a climate of suspicion and retreat. When snowbirds vanish, the economic impact doesn't stop at vacation rentals. It ripples through every sector. According to Redfin data center, seasonal home rentals in Florida have dropped 31%, while airline bookings for Canadian origin flights to Southwest Florida are down 38% year over year. These numbers tell a simple story: fewer long-term residents, fewer customers across the board. The consequences are visible in local businesses. At Publix and independent grocery stores in Bonita Springs, managers report sharp revenue declines compared to previous winters. Snowbirds once filled carts with weeks' worth of groceries. Today, the aisles are quieter, the checkout lines shorter. Healthcare providers are facing an even harsher blow. Many clinics and specialists relied on seasonal Canadian patients, particularly retirees managing chronic conditions. Recent surveys show some practices have lost up to 60% of their winter patient base. Doctors are cutting staff, and some clinics are closing entire departments. The construction industry, too, is suffering. With snowbirds selling condos and halting renovation plans, 70% of seasonal contracts have disappeared. Landscaping, remodeling, pool maintenance, jobs once guaranteed each winter, are vanishing. Visualize this as a chain reaction diagram. Fewer snowbirds, less demand for housing, falling patient counts at hospitals, lower grocery sales, restaurants cutting hours, airlines slashing flights. The economy is behaving like a string of Christmas lights. If one bulb burns out, the entire strand goes dark. This is the essence of the domino effect. Snowbirds aren't just another market segment. They are the glue that holds together multiple layers of the local economy. When they leave, everyone from surgeons to supermarket clerks feels the hit. While Florida tightens restrictions, other destinations are opening doors. In Mexico, the government and private sector have launched initiatives under the banner Amigos del Norte. These include simplified visa processes, English-speaking healthcare networks, and streamlined cross-border money transfers. The result? According to CoStar, Canadian long-stay visitors to Mexico surged 78% in the past 3 years. Portugal offers a similar case study. With its Golden Visa program, access to EU healthcare, and a lifestyle blending modern comfort with old-world charm, the country has become a magnet for international retirees. Data from FHFA and Eurostat show home prices along Portugal's southern coast rising 12% annually, fueled in part by foreign buyers priced out of Florida. Consider the story of the Jackson family from Fort Myers. After years of frustration with policy hurdles and rising hostility, they sold their Florida condo and relocated to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. There, they found not just affordability, but also a welcoming community and healthcare providers who spoke fluent English. A simple visual comparison illustrates the trend. Florida's graph is sloping down, while Mexico and Portugal are climbing steadily upward. These markets are not only capturing Florida's lost demand, but also building reputations as reliable, trust-driven destinations. The lesson is stark. When one market creates barriers, others are ready to absorb the demand. Florida's unraveling carries a broader warning for other Sunbelt states. Arizona, Nevada, and California all have significant snowbird populations. If similar restrictive policies take hold, these markets could face the same downward spiral. At its core, tourism and seasonal residency are built on two pillars: trust and respect. Sunshine and beaches may attract first-timers, but what keeps visitors coming back is how they are treated. Strip that away, and loyalty collapses overnight. An internal email leak from a Florida tourism board captures the growing concern. If we lose the Canadians, we risk losing the ecosystem that sustains our communities. That line isn't just bureaucracy, it's a candid admission of existential risk. Picture the timeline visually. Florida in 2020 as a booming paradise, by 2025 trending downward, and by 2030 at risk of becoming a ghost town every winter. 6 months of silence where once there was economic vibrancy. The takeaway is urgent. If policymakers and communities don't adapt, the very foundation of seasonal economies could crumble. And this is where I turn the camera back to you, the audience. What do you think? Are these policies protecting local communities, or are they strangling them? What lessons should Arizona, Nevada, or California draw from Florida's mistakes? Because in the end, this isn't just a Florida story. It's a global lesson about the fragility of economies built on trust. Florida's story is no longer just about sunny beaches and palm trees. It's a cautionary tale about how fragile entire economies can become when trust and long-term relationships are disrupted. What we've seen is not just a real estate adjustment, but a fundamental shift. One policy, one barrier, one misstep can set off a chain reaction that turns thriving communities into seasonal ghost towns. But here's the real takeaway. The future is still unwritten. Other states, Arizona, Nevada, California, still have the chance to learn from Florida's mistakes. The key isn't more restrictions or short-term wins. It's rebuilding confidence, respect, and community loyalty. Because no matter how beautiful the landscape, if people don't feel welcome, they won't return. And now I'd like to hear from you. Do you think Florida can recover from this decline? Are these policies justified, or are they eroding the very foundation of local prosperity? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every one of them. If you found value in this analysis, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who cares about the future of real estate and tourism. Together, we can keep this conversation alive. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Your attention and insights are what make this community stronger. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and let's keep asking the questions that matter.